Steve Seymour here with the Investor Agent Podcast, where we help transform the scarcity and lack mindset to abundance and wealth, one conversation at a time. I'm here with Sheila Dragon. Thank you for being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steve.
So Sheila, we want to dive right into what got you into real estate? What got you started?
I've always known that I wanted to own my own properties and started pretty early in the 2000s when I was a sales rep, and I didn't even know house hacking existed back then. But ever since I've owned property, even if it's my own personal residence, I've always taken on a tenant and sort of.
So you were house hacking before it was a thing.
I was house hacking before it was a thing.
There you go.
And I still am. Yep.
Still going.
Yep.
It's a great strategy. And tell us a little bit about what areas you cover and what your niche is now.
So I started a home staging business in 2007, I guess, right as the real estate bubble had sort of crashed and there was a lot of houses on the market. And that's when I really kind of got more into the real estate investing side of things, helping people get their homes prepared for sale, kind of doing mini rehabs with them. And so just from there, things kind of snowballed and I started flipping my own properties, raising capital, using investors who wanted to diversify their retirement portfolios. And then that sort of spun into vacation rentals and stumbling on the vacation rental market. And so just little by little, in an almost really weird sort of way, my career path has sort of followed the path that you see on HGTV, completely unintended, but now you see all these shows, Property Brothers, unsellable houses, where you're renovating a property and putting it on the market. So I recognized I had to get my real estate license.
Well, you said a lot there, so I want to dive into a couple things. Definitely the Airbnbs.
Okay.
But before that, going back to when you said raising capital and flipping your own houses. Mm-hmm. For any listeners out there that don't understand the lingo raising capital, can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. So I recommend if anybody is going to get into flipping that you really need to do it yourself first before you start asking people to use their money. So I partnered up with a home inspector and a family member, and we kind of pooled our money together 50-50. He sort of taught me the ropes of flipping. And then as your work kind of speaks for itself and people see what you're doing, then they recognize and they trust that you have the ability to do it. So then I started going to a lot of investor training classes all over the country, sort of learned about self-directed IRAs, and work with a local company. They're a small family-run business, Camaplan, and then I helped investors open up an account, take some of their money out of, like a Vanguard or a E-Trade or wherever they have their money. They can kind of roll it over and with no tax implication, but now they can direct it themselves.
A truly self-directed IRA.
Truly
not
self-directed,
the one
yes.
At an institution that says, here, you can direct your IRA into our
stock. Yeah. Right.
Our options that we give you.
Yes. You're picking your own options. You could actually invest in an alpaca farm if you wanted to.
So that sounds super simple, but was that as easy as it sounds, where you really just, you got connected with the right custodian that offers this truly self-directed plan, and then you found some friends, family, associates who have retirement accounts, and you said, look, there could be a better way. Mm-hmm. I could get you a higher return secured by real estate. I don't know, you want to dive into those conversations at all that you had? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is like,
how to raise the capital.
Yeah, raising capital is a big thing. I know for you, it's like, it's easy now, but it's for anyone that's listening that wants to flip houses and they're like, well, I would flip a house if I could raise capital, but they get stuck with this. So that's why I want to spend a little time on it.
Right. It's about a 2-week process. And the tricky thing with a self-directed IRA is that once you put the money into a self-directed account, it's literally sitting there doing nothing. So, for me, it was a timing thing. After I finished my first rehab, I knew when we were about to hit the market and started already looking for my next one so that my investors' money was never sitting idle for too long of a period of time, as best I could, prevent that from happening. So, as a steward of somebody else's money, it's really important that you're always trying to do the best that you can to protect their investment and to also, move it forward. So when you're ready to close on a property, roughly maybe 2 weeks before that, if you have enough investors that have said, I'll pledge X and I'll pledge Y, and you pool the money together to make sure that you have the money to buy the deal, carry the deal, and rehab the deal, you need to plan for about a 2-week changeover period when you're first getting up and running. Once the account's up and running and you finish a project, the money goes right back into the self-directed account with the principal and the interest, and then you're ready to roll right on to the next project. But getting started, you need to give yourself a little bit of time, but you don't want all your investors' money sitting for 6 months while you're out looking for a property.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then their total return's a little diminished because it was getting no return for that time that it was just sitting stagnant.
Right. Yes.
That's very cognizant and good for your investors, like you said, trying to do what's best for them. All right, so your career kind of started with sales, then staging, then flipping, and then now what?
So now I'm not doing as much individual staging for like a regular realtor that might call me up and say, can you come stage, my client's house? I'm doing it more for our rehabs, for agents that I've really established a close relationship with. I'm starting to more focus on acquiring short-term rentals, vacation rentals, sort of building on where my career has gone, for the last 12, 13 years. But I'm finding that the short-term rental market seems to be a really good spot for putting your money to work and also growing a good passive income for retirement. So if you could get a few vacation rentals up and running now that are generating income and you're paying down the debt now, by the time you go to retire, if you have, 3 or 4 vacation rentals that are all generating over $100,000 a year in income.
Yeah, it's a cash machine.
Yeah. So
I know you're really passionate about that. Why don't you share a little bit about where you're doing that currently? I know you have a couple different areas, so tell us a little bit where you're doing them and then what your properties are like.
So my first vacation rental was kind of an unintended COVID consequence. I used some investor dollars, rehabbed a property in Avalon, New Jersey, and it was supposed to just be a quick short-term flip. And when COVID hit and we didn't sell, we needed to kind of course correct very quickly. And so I said, we need to turn this into a vacation rental property. So we did. I went, one of my mentors that trains all across the country was running a vacation rental course in Branson, Missouri. And little did I know that she had already acquired like 7 or 8 vacation rental properties in the Branson, Missouri area. So she was teaching flipping, massive passive, flip to keep. So I'd been following her career and her courses for a long time. So when she turned her, flip to keeps into keep vacation rental, I said, okay, I need to go check out her class.
It's like keeping a rental and then shooting with steroids.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I went to her class, and part of that was the mentorship program that she offered. And so then I turned around in another couple of weeks and went back down to Missouri for a more intensive training. And that led on a tour, like a bus tour, to kind of go see the different areas. Because you have to be careful when you're getting a vacation rental up and running. A lot of hotels are not fans of short-term rentals. A lot of townships have gotten pushback from the hotel community. They've tried to put, stipulations in place. So you could end up picking up a property and then think you're going to vacation rental it and find out.
You really need to know the restrictions so you don't buy something and then you can't use it for what you intended.
Exactly. So we were very purposeful in our tour down there and only went to communities that were deeded nightly rental. It's a vacation town. So anyways, I decided to take the leap and 1031 exchanged a condo in Pennsylvania for the land down in Missouri, and then took out a construction loan and built.
For the listeners that don't know what a 1031 is, real quick, 30 seconds.
If you have a property where you're going to get crushed with capital gains, you could basically exchange into another property, like for like, dollar-wise, and basically divert that gain for a longer period of time.
Well said.
Thanks.
I didn't give you much time. So, all right. So you still have your Airbnb in Avalon, right? Do you mind sharing any big numbers on it? You don't have to go into details, but like approximately what you have into it, what it's worth, what kind of cash flow is it generating?
So investor dollar-wise right now, we have about, I want to say, right around $500,000 in investor capital. We needed to refinance a construction loan and turn that into a traditional commercial loan for residential property. That's roughly 1.6. So we're probably into it for a little over $2 million. And thankfully, the market down there is doing pretty well. We've had some inquiries from buyers about putting a pool in, so I'm finalizing the plan for that. The goal is to, put a pool in hopefully over this winter, and then the pool should hopefully pay for itself almost in one summer of rental income. During the peak season right now, we're getting, I would say, just around 11,000 a week.
11,000 a week.
Maybe a little more.
Yeah.
And then if we're able to put the pool in, probably should be able to get around 15,000 a week.
Wow. $3,000 more for a pool. Definitely pays for itself quickly.
Yeah.
So then let's compare that to what you're doing where is it? In Branson, Missouri?
In Branson, Missouri. Yep.
So share a little bit about what you're buying there and what those numbers look like.
So, fortunately, I got in at a really good time when Branson was sort of on the upswing for explosion. And so, all in, I'm probably little over 530,000, just maybe a little more when you factor in I had to also furnish the whole thing. So
Sure.
You have to take that into account.
Absolutely,
too. You
yeah.
have to, budget for that. But the property values have almost doubled down there already. So
it's not a bad return on investment.
No.
And then what's the cash flow look like?
So for our property is a 7-bedroom, 6.5 bath house down there, and they usually bring in about $850 a week, somewhere in there during the high season. $850 a night.
$850 a night.
Yeah, a night.
Wow.
So during the peak season, that's where you're really going to, cash flow the property well. Branson's also kind of known for its holiday traditions. So it's a very big Christmas town, similar to what you might see on Hallmark. So you're usually going to be pretty solidly booked for October, November, December between the fall foliage. And then January, February are usually pretty slow down there. It's a good time for your deep cleans and gearing up for any repairs and stuff that you need to do. And then, it really starts to pick back up in April.
Okay, so you kind of have the fall and then spring market.
And summer.
Yeah. And I mean, do you have any idea what kind of ROI you're getting on these properties? I mean, obviously that one you bought at the right time and the values have gone up a lot. So, but on that one.
So for Branson, that's hard to say for me just yet because I haven't quite hit a full year cycle. And we didn't get off the ground until July. So I missed the whole mid-May and June market. It
sounds like some really incredible numbers though, if you're getting even anything close to, even if you cut that, peak season down in half.
Yeah,
even if you're getting 500 a night, it's still in the fall crazy good cash flow.
Yeah, the fall and the winter, you're definitely not getting the 850 a night. But based on my mentor's numbers and the similar size Bed Bath house, she's roughly bringing in around 130 to 140,000 a year in income. Now, obviously, you have to take your expenses off of that, but depending on whether you own the property free and clear is going to help with that. So if you
bought it for 500 and it was $100K net, that would be a 20% cash on cash return.
Right. And if you can withhold taking that profit in personally and using it and just pump it down to pay your loan off faster if you needed to get a loan, you should be able to pay that property off within 5 to 7 years and have a free and clear property.
So there are ways to buy expensive houses and make them cash flow.
That is correct.
There you go. And you figured it out. Yeah, I think a lot of people only look at cash flow in the low end markets, and then they say, oh, well, the higher end markets are just appreciation, long-term pay down, and there's some truth to that to a degree. But when you get creative and turn it into a short-term rental, you see a niche market where there's a higher demand or you buy at the right time, you can always really compound your return by getting creative like that. So that's awesome. That's a lot to share. So Sheila has a lot of experience in selling houses, staging houses, flipping houses, raising capital, working with short-term rentals and managing them as well as setting them up. So who would be someone that might want to work with you, like reach out to you and, either invest with you, or if anyone's looking in this area, I just want to make sure people know kind of what you do now and how they can potentially connect with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that point. I have a teaching degree, so I'm at a point where I want to start giving back and helping to get newbies off the ground with a flip. If it's me partnering up with my time and getting a portion of the profit to help somebody through the process and make sure that they're not making those big costly mistakes. For the most part, I've been lucky. I've had good mentors, but you always have, COVID was an unintended consequence, and we definitely had 2 properties that didn't do as well as we would have hoped. And I'm grateful that the one property and the investors understood and stuck in, and nobody wanted to take a loss. But, you have things that are thrown at you in the middle of a project. It could be that you opened up a wall and weren't expecting an issue to come about. So there's a process to kind of go through to make sure that you do your best to at least break even, get your investors their returns back. That's the most important thing. And then, you take the profit after that.
I also hear a big lesson in there about it's not always you try to mitigate risk and reduce problems, but it's also about how do you solve them.
When you stumble upon one.
You pivoted, you were creative, you thought of something, turned it from a flip to a rental, a short or vacation rental. And then it's funny how life works. And then that turned you on to a whole nother market that you probably wouldn't have had that mistake not happen. And this is such a good example of why you have to not be so afraid of failing and making mistakes, but it's more about it's not about the resources you have, but the resourcefulness that you can apply to these situations. And that's also for an investor looking for someone to invest with is a big thing in looking at an operator is what happens if something does go wrong? How are they going to handle this problem? How are they going to still make it work? How are they, still going to make the return out of it? So I heard a lot in there. Yep. Just wanted to pinpoint those things. We're going to just wrap it up. So just if anyone wants to reach out to Sheila, we'll put her information below. And before we do, any words of wisdom in terms of helping, agents or investors or clients or anyone that's looking to get into it, how to get started, where to look, and, just any words of advice from your experience?
Yeah, I know the hardest part is taking that leap of faith and getting started. But if you don't try, you'll never know whether you can do it or not. And if you are afraid and, have that fear on your shoulder, then, even though you might have to not take as big of a profit on your first one, it's worth it to partner with somebody who's already been through the process, because it's pretty much like going to college and, spending money on an education. You have to get educated. You can't just go blindly and do it. I just toured a couple of rehabs in Westchester while we're out looking for our next opportunity. And I felt like the rehabber that did that particular project, definitely the master bathroom was bigger than the bedroom. And it's like, there's certain things that, you want to do for a rehab, and then there's certain things that you don't want to do. And ironically, this particular rehab's been on the market for quite a while, even though it's totally redone. So, you want to work with somebody that can help you think through and not make big, costly mistakes, because when you've got to carry a property
Sure.
for a long period of time, especially if you have a construction loan on the property, you can't turn it into a rental.
Right.
Because the loan is a different structure and they don't allow you to have people living there. So you really want to at least talk with somebody that's done it before you go do it.
Having someone in your corner that has the experience and knows what they're doing is well worth the weight of what, you're going to end up paying them versus a costly mistake like that.
Yep.
And then just understanding that. And then you learn that lesson one time and you use it forever, basically. So, and
even if you're a rehabber that doesn't know how to pick out the best finishes, some of these rehabbers are putting finishes in that are dated. And so in a current market, working and paying for a few hours of design time to help you pull those finishes together, because when you're on a budget, you're like, oh, well, I'll just use this granite that's $40 a square foot. But then you don't realize that you're going to get all this feedback that's like,
why'd you put this in? It doesn't match.
It feels
doesn't
dated.
Look,
So, penny wise, pound foolish, I guess, is the best
way to put it.
Analogy.
Yep.
But, you can't be penny wise and pound foolish in this business. And a lot of investors are like, oh, well, I'll do the staging at the end. And then I don't have the budget. Well, now it's not going to show as well. And now you're not going to get as high of a return. So you really have to make sure that you think through everything before you go borrow other people's money and potentially screw it up. With the experience that I have, I can 100% say that that's very accurate. And you should definitely take that into consideration if you're getting into the flipping business or even short-term rental, because they're essentially furnished products at the end, and you have to have a good product.
So
if you don't get good reviews, you're not going to get repeat business. So it's all about the marketing and how you set it up. And it is a little bit of a different mindset going into the short-term rental market, where you have to fully furnish and make sure you have everything. But you get those good reviews under the belt, and that helps with your...
we could do probably a 3-hour podcast just on short-term rentals. So we'll do a long-form one at some point. For anyone interested. But in the meantime, you've reached out to Sheila if you have any questions. She obviously has a wealth of knowledge. And thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.